Discover the best-kept secrets from the leading entrepreneurs across the globe. Learn from the greatest minds in business with the MyCoda podcast. Here's your host, Sam Payne.
What's up, everybody? Sam Payne here, and thank you for joining us for another session of the MyCoda podcast. Now, before we get started, I wanted to talk about the development of this podcast and how we're getting along, because we're now approaching the 6th week of where we're releasing our episodes, and it's the 6th session that we've recording today. And it's such an exciting time for us because we get to interview these high-flying entrepreneurs and find out how they started, the pains they had, and we can then deliver that information for you and help you with your own startups. And that for me is just so exciting. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening and just supporting us so far in our journey. And it's been an amazing experience, and it's something I absolutely love doing, and I'm going to continue doing this for a while now. So thank you for your support so far, and look forward to it. We've got so many more great interviews coming up with some specialists across social media, across content creation, across even just setting up a business. Procedures you can go through, how to generate traction, how to validate products, how to sell product, everything that you may be having issues with and that I've had issues with in the past. I can now go out there and ask these guys that are actually killing it, how they done it. So moving on to today's guest, he's no exception to this. This guy is called Jeet Banerjee, and he is a serial entrepreneur. He started out at the young age of 17, and Jeet's got some really cool stories. He goes into the challenges he faced when he was starting out at such a young age, and he touches on a story with a guy called Ken. And I won't say any more about that, but it's a really nice, it's a really funny story, and I enjoy listening to that one. So I'm looking forward to him telling us about that and the experiences he had at starting out at such a young age. And then from there, Jeet has grown, and he's sold that first company he set up and set up 2 more companies since then, which are hugely successful, all in the tech world, all hitting very targeted niches. And he's just got a ton of experience when it comes to getting partners on board, to mentors, to networking. He's done TEDx talks. He talks at conferences all over the world. And he makes a very good profit in everything he does. And what Jeet is going to do for us today is just outline the process he goes through in starting his companies, how he started getting traction and making his money, and the benefits of his mentors and going out and networking in all these places that he's done. And he also offers some really cool advice at the end of the interview as well, which can help a lot of people, because I know a lot of people, when they're in their startup phase, are in a real struggle, hand-to-mouth phase where not a lot's going your way. You're investing everything into your business and nothing seems like it's going right. And Jeet's advice at the end is just really refreshing to hear, and even rung true with me and with my experiences I've had in the past when setting up companies. So I'm going to leave the intro here, guys. Enjoy this show. It is a brilliant interview. This is session 006 of the MyCoda podcast with Jeet Banerjee. Hi, Jeet. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you. For the people out there who may not be familiar with you, could you just please introduce yourself and tell us what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I'm 23 years old. I'm a serial entrepreneur, digital marketing consultant, TEDx speaker, and I've even published a couple of books during my time. So I kind of got started in the entrepreneurship game at the age of 17, and that's kind of when I started my first business. And since then, I've done a TEDx speech. I've spoken at conferences all over the world, sharing my expertise on digital marketing and also entrepreneurship. And I've also mentored and worked with quite a few different startups and entrepreneurs and helping them with their vision. And I currently own a couple of businesses of my own at the moment. So that's just a little bit about myself, yeah.
Awesome. And the theme of this podcast is all about business startups. So could you take us back to when you first started out at 17 and go through the change that took place in you that made you decide to become an entrepreneur and start your own business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of grew up in an old-fashioned Indian family and household. So kind of like a big thing that Indian parents like to instill in their children is the value of money at an early age. So it was probably just about when I turned 15 that my parents kind of told me, hey, I need to go get a job if I want to go get the latest video game or I want to go to the movies with my friends and all that stuff. So at the age of 15, having no mentality or mindset of working, it really sucked. And I ended up applying to a bunch of different jobs. And from the ages of about 15 to 17, I worked almost 12 or 13 different jobs. And they were just like the menial minimum wage jobs that you could think of, whether it's like doing silly things like telemarketing, door-to-door sales, office assistant, cleaning up paperwork, stuff like that. And every month I would either be quitting or I'd be getting fired. And it was just a miserable, miserable time. Like, it was worse than doing chores, working these jobs. And finally 2 years passed by. And this was kind of like the time when I was getting closer. This was my senior year in high school. So I was supposed to graduate and go to college. And I had this whole plan that I would go to college, do my 4 to 5 years, and then get a nice corporate job. And I thought life would be perfect. But here I was not being able to manage a part-time job, working 10 or 15 hours a week. So that's when I knew that I had to kind of find something else at that exact moment that would be able to just make me money. And that's all I cared about, was just making money while being happy and not having to struggle through it. And I just kind of started doing some research online and just trying to figure out like if other people felt the same way. And when I saw that, I came across the idea of entrepreneurship, and I came across different individuals. Like Russell Branson was like one of the first, hit one of his videos, and motivational talks was one of the first videos I saw. And that was kind of like the inspiration or the spark that led me to entrepreneurship.
You said you started your first business at 17, and that was in website development. So what made you decide to go into website development in particular? Did you have that skill set already in place, or was it something you had to work on and develop just to start that company?
Yeah, absolutely. So website development was something that kind of fascinated me from a young age. Like when I was, I think, around 8 or 9 years old, I was a huge basketball fan, and I decided to kind of one summer vacation try to put together my own website, and I was able to successfully do it. And even when I was kind of applying for jobs and stuff between the ages of 15 to 17, like one of the longest jobs I held was for a website development company, kind of doing like their paperwork and answering the phone and stuff for them. So I thought I had the best understanding of that market and that space. And when I started my first company, I also kind of like saw a gap in the industry between like all the people outsourcing and all the people locally, where if you wanted like English speaking, good customer service, you had to pay like $10,000 or $8,000 for a website. But if you're willing to sacrifice that and just get something done for cheap, you can get something done overseas for a couple $1,000s. So I kind of saw this like gap in the market, and I thought, why can't I be the one that's in the middle to basically offer these services, offer the customer support locally, and have an offshore team that does it, and maybe be the person that charges $5,000 in the middle. And that's kind of what sparked that idea. But yeah, to answer your question, web design was something that I had kind of always sparked my interest, so I just decided to run with that.
Cool. And you mentioned there that you had the idea to put a team together. So was it always your intention to build a team around you that could develop these websites, and you just put people their way to build them? Or did you start building the websites initially to start gaining some momentum while the business was in its early stages of growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So from day one, I kind of had the idea that I wanted to find somebody else to do the website building, because my whole idea and my whole plan was I'm already going to school and I don't have that much time. So if I was to build like one website, it would maybe take a month and a half of my time. And I didn't really want to trade that much time for just one project or one amount of sum of money. So my whole goal when building the company was just to really try to find different developers and different teams that I can like bring on, and just kind of start on a per project basis. So every time I bring them a project to pay them, and then so forth.
And a question some people might be asking now is, where did you go to find these people to start building this team?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did initially was I created a fake posting of my own saying that I wanted a website to be built. And then I started seeing kind of just to gauge the market. So I had all these people locally contacting me, and I kind of got a feel of how they created proposals, what their sales pitch was, and how much they would charge. And I got a bunch of people overseas as well. And I kind of just started filtering through like the works of all these overseas companies and these individual freelance developers that would message me and contact me. And I just kind of shortened a list of maybe like 5 or 6 that were at the top of my list that I thought were like the most credible, gave me the best responses, and had the best portfolio. And then from there, I just kind of told them, I don't have a website project for you yet, but I'm starting up this company, and I'd love to work with you if you're interested. And all of them were more than interested, and that's kind of how I got started.
That's great advice, because you went and done something that other people wouldn't think of doing, and that's putting yourself in the position of the customer first to see what you could get in from developers, as opposed to approaching developers and saying, I've got a company straight away. I think a lot of people could probably learn a lot from that, because you've got a real feel for what the customer would feel from those guys. So I think that's awesome. And do you know, I was checking out your TEDx talk and I loved it. The one thing that really stood out to me was your story about Ken and Ken's company that you went to build a website for, and it was your first contract. Do you mind just telling that story for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was when I was 17, and I probably looked like I was 13 years old. So that didn't help the case much either. But so I was talking back and forth on the phone with this guy named Ken, and he had said, "All right, come to my office, and we'll set up a meeting to discuss like the web development services and stuff like that." This was when I was doing a lot more like outreach rather than like setting up inbound leads and all that stuff. That's something that I learned more of later on down the line. So I end up going to his office, and this was kind of like my first meeting, first ever in-person type of thing. And I was kind of extremely nervous, anxious, heart beating, all that good stuff. And I kind of walk in, and I kind of get all these blank stares from all these people. And Ken, the guy that I'm supposed to be meeting, kind of comes up to me and goes, "Are you looking for your father? Like this short here?" And that was one of the most dejecting moments, especially being a young entrepreneur and just starting out and thinking I had all these like massive goals, and just getting rejected like that was it was a pretty rough feeling, but I was able to overcome it after a couple months. Yeah.
And dare I ask, did Ken go through and sign a contract with you, or did nothing come of that one?
Nothing came of that
one. And, do you know, I think this is a great story, because people always have a million excuses not to start a company. And age seems to be a very common one. Even on the opposite end of the scale, people tend to say they're too old. So what other challenges did you face when you were starting out, like the ones with Ken? And what did you learn from these experiences that encouraged you to carry on and not just give up at the first hurdle?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the bigger things that I kind of learned early on, along with the story, with the whole idea of Ken and stuff, was especially when I was a younger entrepreneur, like the challenge of like working with older people, older developers, older project managers, and stuff like that, was really finding a way to get their respect and to be able to like work with them and in a solid way. Because one of the struggles that I had oftentimes was I would hire someone, they'd maybe work for like 2 to 3 weeks, and then they would to my face tell me, "Oh, they're not going to take orders from me because I'm 17 years old," and they might have been like 35 or 40 years old. And that was kind of like hurtful, because I wasn't trying to like make it seem like I'm giving someone orders. It was just I'm trying to run my business, and whatever needs to get done, I'm kind of telling them like, "Oh, this is the next task," or so forth, that we need to get done. And that was kind of one of the big struggles that I had to kind of deal with. And I just kind of realized like early on that the biggest solution, or the biggest way that I was able to deal with that, was just kind of like straight up letting people know from the beginning, like, "Okay, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is what my company does. Is this something that you're comfortable with? And can you work in an environment like this?" Because honestly, there's people that can't work in an environment taking orders from someone that's half their age. And then there's other people that see it as a blessing, and they say, "This is the greatest thing ever, because now I get to learn from someone so young, and I'm learning new ideas that I might not necessarily learn in another area or another space or industry." So that was one of the challenges that I definitely dealt with and kind of overcame. The other challenges were mainly like day-to-day obstacles, just day-to-day things. That this was my first business, so I didn't know too much about the business world. So it was almost like every day I'd face a new challenge or a new obstacle or something new that I had to figure out, learn, and kind of problem solve with. But I think that was like one of the best ways that I learned, was just by doing, rather than if I would have just sat there and maybe read like 10 books on how to start a business for 6 months. I think I learned a lot more and a lot faster by just kind of starting my business and doing it, and kind of going through the journey myself and kind of seeing what comes up and how to deal with those situations. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another really common thing that comes when I'm speaking to everyone in these interviews. They're massive action takers. I mean, even the guys that love reading books, they will dedicate a small percentage of their time reading, and a lot of their time just implementing and taking action. So for anyone out there listening who struggles with that, I think that's something they've just got to get over. I mean, because you mentor and consult people on the side of your own companies, and do you find that as a common problem with the guys that you're mentoring at the minute, or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the biggest things that I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs I mentor and stuff is they'll have like 100 different ideas written down, and they'll be like, so I have all these ideas written down, like which one do you think is the best? And my answer to them is, I have no idea. You got to go out there and try all the 100 of these ideas, and that's how you'll see. But they're kind of fixated on the idea, well, which one's the best one? Which one should I start with, and all that stuff. And I kind of explain to them, like, it doesn't matter which one you start with, because at the end of it, you're probably going to end up having to go through all 100 of these ideas regardless, because even if one idea does well, how do you know that another one of these ideas can't do better? And that's kind of like the constant battle. So I deal with this all the time with other aspiring entrepreneurs, and my advice is just to take massive action and to take quick. And if you're going to fail, you might as well fail fast. There's no point of waiting a year to fail when you can fail tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think it's Mark Zuckerberg says, move fast and break things, which is a great quote. I love that one. And let's talk a little bit more about the guys you're helping with your mentorship. What are the common struggles you see people have when they're setting up and running their own businesses, and how do you help them overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we just discussed, that's probably one of the bigger struggles that I see. Another thing that I see oftentimes is kind of focusing on ideas where they don't necessarily have the skills or the people around them to make them successful. So it's really cool to have an engineering idea, but if you aren't an engineer and you don't know anything about engineering, it's extremely tough to execute it because you have this huge learning curve that you have to go through. And that's kind of one thing that I talk to my entrepreneurs about, and I tell them all the time, is don't focus on the markets that have money or the markets that seem like they're the hottest and the most in markets, because that's what the media does. They isolate certain markets like biotech, and they'll be like, oh, this is the market to get into, and then everyone's forcing themselves to find an idea. But rather I tell them to just use what they know and use like the problems that they deal with on a regular basis and create solutions for them, because not only do they have the skill set to do that, they have the knowledge necessary to kind of tackle a problem like that. So it's really a lot about like helping these entrepreneurs kind of like shape their ideas so that they're focusing on something that's more approachable than going after like a long shot of an idea. And then another thing that I kind of see maybe with entrepreneurs that are a little further along on their journey is kind of the idea of scaling when there's nothing to scale. So I kind of see like some entrepreneurs they'll get like a little bit of cash coming in or a little bit of traction coming in, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the model to scale and this is the model to go all in. But they'll kind of zero out their bank accounts, go all in and all that stuff, and then hit the ground really hard. And it's always a case of you scale too fast, and you've got to first nail it down, and you've got to understand every angle of that one concept or that one product, and make sure you know all the risks associated with it. And then once you have that completely under your folds, that's when you can kind of go all in and scale. So scaling is something that you've got to be very careful with, because you do it at the wrong time, it can cost you a lot, but you do it at the right time, it can make you a lot.
Yeah, and that's amazing advice as well. And that brings me on to a point which I want to cover nicely. Is you talked then about surrounding yourself with people that have got the skill set you may not have. So do you feel that for someone that's starting out, if they haven't got a particular skill set, say, for example, for your example, they can't build websites, but they want to build a company that develops websites for other people, would you encourage them to learn a certain element of that skill first, or would you encourage them just to go out and find a team that can execute that for them and they manage that team?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it just really depends on kind of like, I guess it's a matter of like supply and demand. So like for me, when I was doing like the whole website design and web development thing, like there was an endless supply of web developers, especially overseas, that have the skill and were looking for work. So for me, it wasn't as much of a necessity to learn that skill, because I was able to find these individuals and I didn't even have to pay them up front. They were just like, oh, when you get a project and you get cash coming in, bring it to me. So based on my like kind of business ecosystem and structure, it worked out very well. But for someone else, like let's say you're trying to find like a chemical engineer, for example, the supply of that is extremely low, but the demand is extremely high. So for something in a business realm like that, you may need to either pick up the skills yourself, or you might have to spend a lot of time really searching, maybe give out equity in a case like that. It just kind of really depends on like the skill set that you're looking for and kind of what the supply and demand is dictated in the market.
Yeah, so it's just a case of doing a lot of research and going from there, because I think a lot of people, when they get an idea, they just jump straight into it and find that actually it's not such a great idea and they've wasted quite a bit of time and money. Well, let's talk about go back to your businesses now. I mean, you said you started your first company at 17, which was your website development company. But where did you go from there? What was your next move from that point on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I ran JB Media Force for about 2 years. I grew my company to a little over 20 employees before I ended up selling it at the age of 19. And the biggest thing that I realized was when I first started out as an entrepreneur, I just wanted to be happy and make money. Those were like the two things that were my keys on the priority list, so to speak. And I quickly realized that to life and to business and to entrepreneurship, there was more than that. It wasn't just about making money. Like I wanted to feel like I was making a difference. And with the web development company, like I said, there was so much supply, like an endless supply of it, where I didn't feel like if I was in business tomorrow or not, I didn't feel like it would matter. Like people would still get their websites made and life would still go on. And that's what kind of caused me to realize that I wanted to work on something where I felt like I was more needed and I was actually creating a problem that people couldn't live without. Creating a solution to a problem that people couldn't live without. And so I put the company up for sale. I ended up selling the business for a profit. And then I moved on to my second company, which is StatFuse.
Yeah, and StartFuse is it was a very niche company. I won't describe, I'd let you go into this bit now, but how did you go from website development into such a tiny niche, which StartFuse was all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you guys an overview of what StatFuse is, it's basically an online web application that helps high school students and community college students with the transition to a four-year university. So we basically calculate a student's chances of getting into over 1,200 plus schools, and we analyze their college application using our technology to tell them strengths, weaknesses, and what they can do to better shape their applications to get into a university. So the reason why we got into this was me and one of my childhood friends at the time had kind of dealt with this problem, and we just started discussing it one day. When we both went to high school, especially here in the U.S., the resources with like the budget cuts and stuff are so limited that you get maybe 30 minutes of your counselor's time to discuss college, and that's it. And most parents don't know what the process is like today, and they don't know how to do it. So unless you have thousands of dollars to spend on a college consultant, you are basically left in the dark when applying to these universities. And we just thought it was an extremely tough process, extremely daunting task to know exactly how to apply to college properly. And you only get one shot at it because college is just one-time thing. You apply once, you get in once, and that's it. You don't get in, it's kind of like you're set back. So that's where like the whole idea and the problem came about from. And we just wanted to come up with some kind of a technological solution to it, whether it was a complete solution or not. We didn't know if we could achieve that, but we wanted to at least make the process much easier. And that's kind of where the idea came from.
Yeah, and was there anything in the market at the time that was doing the same thing as this?
Yeah, so there were a couple other products that were competitive to this in the market, but when we kind of reviewed them and we kind of went through them, we just felt like they still didn't do the job that they were necessarily there to do. So mainly, like a lot of these companies had a main focus and a main business, and this was just kind of like a tool they added on the side to like generate leads, for example, or to get students information. And while they were providing some kind of result in return, it wasn't extremely accurate and it wasn't extremely helpful. And that's why we wanted to build like a full comprehensive tool that did everything and kind of was as accurate as possible.
Yeah, and for the guys out there thinking of building a SaaS product like this, how did you first go about trying to find guys that could build this product for you? And how did you approach them? And did you get someone on board that was very tech oriented who could communicate what you wanted to these developers, or was it something you just learned as you went along?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what ended up happening, so my partner and I, my childhood buddy, we partnered up on this project. So we were kind of like the business side. And one of the cool things that kind of led from a connection from my first company, JB Media Force, to this was I had a huge list of developers that trusted me. I gave them a lot of work and stuff like that. So I kind of reached out to a few and I kind of told them, look, this is the project that I have in mind. This is the idea. I kind of gave them wireframes and stuff like that. I'm looking to not pay cash. My top preference would be to pay equity and bring someone on board long term that can help with like the development and the hosting and the design of this project. So eventually, after taking a couple meetings and going through the process, I found a development company that was interested, and they basically took on the project and they kind of handled all the development resources for us. And my partner and I were just able to kind of go all in on obviously like building the product and also building the marketing lists and stuff like that.
Yeah. And how long did it take the developers to actually build that product for you?
So just to build our beta version, we took about 6 months just to get the beta version out. Yeah.
And I mean, that's actually quite quick to build a bit of software like that. And what did you do in that 6 month period to see if this is actually something people wanted? Did you start testing this before the build actually went ahead, or did you start testing it a lot more once the build was going on?
So we actually tested this a lot more once the build was going on. So like in terms of like doing surveys and stuff, we basically just surveyed like our high school friends, because both my partner and I had just graduated from high school. So we had a lot of friends that knew about this process. So our kind of like, I guess, so forth to validate process was it was pretty half-assed, to be honest. And this was kind of something that we learned later on, that like you got to put a full effort in and all that stuff. But we just kind of surveyed and talked to like our high school friends and stuff. And they all said, "Oh, it's a great idea. It's a really cool idea. We'd be interested in it." And then we just said, "Okay, let's go all in and let's build this out." And then as kind of like the process of the building out was coming along, and we kind of started showing people like small samples and small screenshots and stuff like that, that's when we kind of spent a lot more time in like really getting customer feedback and understanding our customers. So we probably could have gotten the build done in maybe half the time, 3, maybe 4 months, if we had kind of put more time in initially to survey and really understand our customers. But we hadn't really done that, and we started doing that mid-build. So we had to go back and oftentimes like rebuild a lot of things and stuff like that. So yeah.
That's cool. That's cool, man. With that company, that is now still running, isn't it? But it's almost a passive income for you, isn't it?
Yeah. So right now that company is still running, and it's a passive income company. We're actually we're actually in the process of looking to kind of move on from this business as well, my partner and I. And we're kind of talking to different companies about different opportunities in that realm as well. So yeah, but as of now, it's a passive company. We've got about just over about 200,000 users now. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so your latest company, and it's the company you're still working on, Visionary Media. Could you just tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so what we do at Visionary Media Group is we have a team of creatives, designers, and developers all in-house, and we basically focus on mobile applications. But unlike the traditional company, we don't like do mobile application development for like third parties or other businesses, or essentially like in a client service basis. We create our own in-house ideas, and we kind of monetize, and we kind of make money off of our own ideas. So that's basically what we do with Visionary Media Group, and we've got a little over a couple hundred apps now in the Google and iPhone store, and we're kind of working on that on a regular basis and just growing that. And yeah.
Wow, a couple of hundred apps. That's a lot of apps. Where's the limit? Where's your aim with that?
Sorry, what was that again? It was kind of cutting out.
I say a couple of hundred apps is a lot of apps to have in your inventory. So where's the limit? I mean, where are you going to stop developing these apps? You're just going to keep developing more and more apps over the years?
Yeah, so like in the beginning, like we were just kind of really trying to gauge and test and understand the market. So we kind of moved really fast, and we just kind of built a bunch of different things in like a bunch of different categories just to see like what like the monetization strategies were, and kind of how people reacted in different categories and stuff. So it was a learning process. So that kind of built up our app portfolio quite a bit. And then now we're a little bit more focused. Like we're now focusing mainly on games. So to build out a game takes maybe like a month versus like building out like a basic reference app or a catalog or something that might take like a day to build out. So I think with this new structure, it's definitely going to slow down like our development process, but we're also hopeful in the fact that it can generate a lot more income and get a lot more downloads.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's great. And I mean, what made you decide to go from helping college kids out with their applications to starting Visionary Media and building all these applications?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started StaffViews and when I started Visionary Media Group, at the time I didn't have the idea that I was going to kind of be moving on from StaffViews as well and kind of be talking to different companies about opportunities and stuff. StaffViews was just kind of passive, and I had all this time now, and I wanted to start another business. So that's where the idea of Visionary Media Group came out. And I'd always been passionate about mobile applications, even from the time of web development, because I knew mobile was going to be the future and the next big thing. And I really wanted to capitalize on it. And I thought this was the perfect time gap that I had to be able to capitalize on it. And the thing that I love and that makes me the most passionate about mobile is that it's a lot shorter of a time frame to launch something on mobile, and to do the marketing and all that stuff is so much easier than to do that for like a web company. Because when you're kind of like a web company, like nobody knows you and nobody's really going to do your marketing for you. But when you publish an app under iOS or under Google, you've kind of got this umbrella where they're going to help your app to be successful, because the more successful your app is, the more money they make. So just with that model and just with seeing how many problems I could solve on the App Store, really got me passionate about kind of pursuing apps and just putting together a team that of people that were had kind of like a similar vision to mine, and just kind of going out and doing that.
Yeah, and when did you start Visionary Media?
I started Visionary Media Group now about, I want to say it was around like 21, about like 2 years almost now.
Yes, I mean, that's amazing growth. To go from 0 to over 200 apps in just under 2 years is incredible. And in both StartFuse and Visionary Media, you have separate business partners. So what advice would you give someone out there who is looking for a business partner, and how would you advise them to decide whether this is the person that's the right fit for that company?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing for both of my companies, like my main business partner was always someone that I had known for a very, very long time. So like with StatFuse, I've known my business partner for almost like 14, 15 years, childhood friends, like best friends since we were young and all that stuff. And then for Visionary Media Group, my partner, I knew her for like 7, 8 years now. So the biggest thing that I recommend to entrepreneurs is it's extremely hard, especially if you're going to do like a 50-50 partnership, to just like meet someone at a meetup and say, oh, let's become partners tomorrow. Because you've known this guy maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. Even if you know someone like a year, like how well do you really know them? Because when it's a business, it's almost very similar to like a relationship. Like, are you going to like meet a girl tomorrow and get married to her on Thursday or the following Thursday? Probably not, right? Because you don't know her well enough to get in bed with her and to create this life with her and all that stuff. And that's the way that I look at starting a business with. So my best advice for people that are looking for business partners and stuff is really just go down to like the closest people around you and the people that you know the best, and see who has like a similar mindset as you, right? Like out of like maybe 100 of my friends, I have like 3 or 4 people that think similar to me or have like kind of like that entrepreneurial spark, while the rest 96, 97 say it's too risky, they would never touch it, they're fearful of it. So first you got to break down your friends list and your family list and figure out who thinks like you and who's even willing to like take a shot at something like this as you would. And then from there, I think the best person to team up with is just someone that's in a very similar position as you, that you've known for a very long time, and you know that if you guys get into a fight or in a battle or into a war, like you guys can get out of it. That's like the biggest thing, because when you know someone for 2 weeks, you get into war with them, you're willing to end the relationship right there on the spot. But with a business, it's like you can't just end a relationship in a business. You got to keep the business going, and you got to do what's best for the business. And I think that's what it really comes down to. So that's probably my best advice for people.
Yeah, and that's great advice. That's great advice. And when you went into partnerships with both these people, did you both bring the same amount of equity into that business, or was it one person bringing in more equity and one person bringing in more expertise?
No. So for both of these businesses, the partners that I started up with in the very beginning, both partners and we split right down the middle, because I thought that was extremely important to show that like if they're going to put in the same amount of time, I valued it more as time rather than as expertise, because my partner, she might be good at one thing and I might be good at another thing. How do you value X is greater than Y or so forth? Yeah. So it was just about the time commitment. If both people put the same amount of time in, then the equity should be the same looking forward long term. So that's kind of just how we did it. And then like obviously from there, like from after me and my partner, obviously we would add on like more people, whether it's developers or someone who can help us with marketing and stuff like that. And for those individuals, the equity would be a lot lower, because I would look at it as a way that my partner and I conceived this idea and we kind of built the foundation, and then we're bringing someone on board. So your value kind of goes up at that point.
Yeah, of course. And did you find it hard to start a business relationship with someone that you've been friends with for such a long time?
Honestly, that was something that I worried about, but it was actually extremely easy, just because like we had this relationship already built. So like it wasn't like ever awkward while working with each other. It was more fun. So like we're always having a good time. We're always joking. Like we could be stepping into like the biggest meeting of our lives, and while we're walking in the elevator, we're laughing, we're cracking jokes, having a great time. And I thought that was extremely cool and extremely nice, because I feel like if it was someone that I wasn't super close with, it might have just been like all business, and like the time that we spent working may have been a little more awkward. But being that it was close friends, like we could be talking about like what we're doing Saturday night and then jump right back to business. Like it had a really cool balance.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. And I mean, we spoke previously about this, and I feel this will hugely benefit the people listening to recognise the difficulties of starting your own company and becoming an entrepreneur. So can you highlight the true difficulties you'll face when starting your own company and how to mentally prepare yourself for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest way to look at the difficulties or struggles of starting a business is the unknown. So you never know what's going to happen, and I feel like you got to be mentally strong and mentally prepared for that to be able to handle that, because tomorrow you might get hit with a lawsuit. You never know. The day after that, you might get your whole website hacked. You just don't know. So there's so many different challenges and so many different things. And I think it just really comes down to the mental preparation. So if you're mentally strong and you're kind of all in on your own, like, so when you start a business, you say, okay, my end goal is XYZ. That end goal might change week after week, but as long as throughout your entire journey of starting that business, your end goal is clear and you're always focused on that, and it's never like, oh, I think I need to get out, or I don't think I can take this anymore. Like, giving up should never be an option, and that's never been an option in my books. Like, no matter what happens, no matter how bad of a day I'm having, it's always like, let's get over this and let's keep moving forward. And I think that's the biggest mentality and the mindset that many people need to go in with. And a lot of people kind of underestimate, and they kind of look at the glam and like the glitz of and the glory of being an entrepreneur, because you read it, oh, this guy got acquired for $500 million. But do you know how many times he might have had to sat down and just start crying before he got to that $500 million point?
Yeah.
So people just don't realize these things, right? Because media outlines the great, but they never outline the behind the scenes and the struggles of maybe the 3 years where he didn't get to eat and he was just like eating ramen noodles or something. So it's that balance that you have to mentally prepare yourself and know what you're really in for when you start a business. And if you know that, I feel like your chances of being successful almost double.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all that, man. I mean, even from my own personal experiences, I've experienced probably everything you mentioned there. So, and I mean, your first company started out by yourself, and then the two companies that followed you started with partners. What advantages would you say there are to starting a company with someone else as opposed to going out and doing it by yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of advantages. I mean, like, just aside from the fact that like you have more time, you've kind of got someone new to, there's someone that's also like working on the same goal with you. So you're obviously growing and expanding faster. I would say the biggest thing for me was just having another person to bounce ideas off of. So even if you start your own business and stuff, you can bounce ideas off of other people, but it's kind of like you got to kind of get the time with them and you got to kind of help them understand the full picture and stuff. But for me, the biggest thing was I just realized how many times I would have been wrong if I didn't have my partner, because I had this idea, and if I was alone, I would have just ran with it. And when I bounced that idea off of them, they told me, no, it's not a good idea, or this doesn't make sense and stuff. And then some of the times we did still go forward with it. And then I looked back and I was like, oh, wow, my partner was right. Like, this is nice. Like, I would have just totally just kept going and been wrong. So I would say the best part about having a partner is just having someone to bounce ideas off of, and just knowing someone's there every single day with you on the same mission as you really makes the journey a lot easier. You feel a lot less lonely.
No, and I mean, cause in my I've got another business, a CrossFit gym, and I've got a business partner there. And actually, I started that company out by myself, and for the first sort of 18 months, I was kind of a one-man band, and it was probably the most horrendous time in my life in terms of working so much, not sleeping enough, and it's when I brought my business partner on board that everything just seemed to get so much easier. So I can definitely relate to that, and I've personally seen those benefits as well. So my advice to people as well would be to, if you can, go and find someone that can help you in your business, you know, because it'll make things 10 times easier. And I want to talk to you about your talks as well, because you go around performing talks at different shows and conferences. And what benefits have you got just from traveling around to different parts of the US and speaking at these events, and then networking with all these guys at the events after your talks?
Yeah, absolutely. So like one of the biggest benefits that I've kind of seen from just being able to speak and kind of do all this stuff is that you meet so many unique and interesting people. So like there's like one type of entrepreneurial scene, like let's say in California, in my area, there's one type of entrepreneurial scene. You go to, let's say, like Omaha, for example, which is like in Midwest USA, you're going to get a completely different type of entrepreneurship field. They have their own beliefs. They have their own like mindsets, their own like whole like world out there. And just to be able to see that and just to be able to partake in that for a few days is extremely eye-opening. Like for me, I got, not only do I get like a lot more ideas, but I also like learn a lot about like culture. And sometimes you'll find like different places do things better than you do. And you can just take that information and come back. And another benefit that I've seen is I've got so many like people in like different places that I've got relationships with. So if I'm ever traveling anywhere just for fun or just for something else, like I've always got that person to be like, oh, hey, let's go grab coffee. Like I don't remember the last time I haven't been somewhere where I didn't know someone, where I was meeting up with them at least once in this new area. And just having that kind of like network of connections all over the U.S. is extremely cool. And so, yeah, those are probably the two biggest benefits that I'll say. And then third is obviously just constantly meeting new people that you can add value to their lives. They can add value back to your lives, making new relationships and just meeting like-minded individuals. Because I think for most of us, unless you're like in Silicon Valley, you're in an area where maybe like less than 1% of the population is an entrepreneur like yourself. So you're kind of surrounded by people that are doing different things than you. And just to go to these conferences and to meet like-minded individuals is always a great feeling.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you on that one as well, man. I mean, like myself, the area I'm in, as you say, isn't really well known for entrepreneurs, so I generally have to travel into the city quite a lot to go and meet these people. But for the guys who don't have the luxury of being able to travel all the time to these conferences and stuff because maybe they've got another job that they've got to juggle as well, how would you advise them to start interacting with people online and joining these networks? They can start being around these people more often, even if it is at home on their computer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if they're just trying to do something like to start off like online basis where they don't want to do something face-to-face interaction, forums are a great way to start, like just creating accounts on forums, joining different like forums and just partaking in these like forums can do great things for you and help you meet a lot of people. Another thing is like Facebook groups, Twitter groups, stuff like that, Twitter chats, stuff like that. They're huge. Those things are always there. They're always niched down, maybe by location, maybe by industry, whatever it is that you're kind of looking for. If you just kind of spend some time on it and you just kind of reach out to some people and do that, that's a great way to just build connections. And even like cold emailing, like some of the biggest connections and stuff that I've made have just been from sending someone an email and saying, hey, I saw you, like, I'm not looking for anything from you. I just wanted to say, like, I'm a huge fan, or I really appreciate XYZ that you do. And I just wanted to let you know that I exist and this is who I am. And that's sometimes a great connection. Like, you just have to be careful of not going there and saying, hey, can you invest $200,000 in my company? Because that's automatically going to be a turnoff and they're not going to respond. But if you just reach out to people genuinely, people will reach out back to you. So those are some things that you can do online. And then in person, like you said, if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of entrepreneurs or you don't see any entrepreneurial events and stuff, you can kind of start your own entrepreneurial community or scene. And that's something that's easy to do with like a site like Meetup or something like that. And usually when you're the person that starts it, you have the biggest advantage in meeting everyone and making the most connections and stuff like that. So I think people oftentimes really undervalue the fact that, oh, I don't have an entrepreneurial scene here, so I guess I can't be an entrepreneur. It's kind of like the mindset many people have, or I can't network. But that's not true. If you can build that in your community, it's going to be a great feeling seeing it grow and being able to make all those great connections.
Yeah, and that's great advice, especially about the meetup thing as well. I think that's awesome advice. And we're running out of time now, so we'll move on to the last couple of questions, Jeet. Finally, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone that's just starting out today, what would it be and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my favorite pieces of advice to give a lot of the entrepreneurs and people that I mentor as well is that when you start a business and you become an entrepreneur, you just have to remember that you only need to be right once. So that really hits home hard when a lot of people think about it, because you can fail 500 times, but people aren't going to remember those 500 times as long as you were right once. And with all these big companies and all these people making big advancements and stuff like that, you just have to remember they were right one time. You don't know how many times they were wrong, and that is all it takes to be successful in the world of business. So if you've been wrong 500 times, don't be sad, because you just need to be right once out of those times. The odds are in your favor. So just keep pushing along and don't get discouraged because you failed so far, because you just got to do it once.
Yeah, I love that. And finally, G, how can people find you online and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a personal website. I used to have the time to be able to blog and all that stuff, but as of late, I haven't had so much time. But you can kind of go through my old posts and get in touch with all my social media and all that stuff. My personal website is jeetbanerjee.com, spelled JeetBanerjee.com, and you can reach out to me through social media on there, email me, whatever I can do to help you.
Cool. And for the guys listening, like always, I'll put the links to that in the show notes. So don't worry about jotting that down now. Just go to the show notes, guys, and all the links will be there. And that's all we've got time for today, G. Thank you so much for coming on today. That was an amazing interview, and I got a lot from that personally. I got a lot from that, so I know the listeners would have too. So thank you for coming on today and giving us some of your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
And that wraps up another show, guys. And thank you so much for tuning in again and listening. We really appreciate your time. We know you're very busy people, but we hope you're getting a lot of value from these sessions. And thank you again, Jeet, just for coming on and providing a ton of value for everyone listening in today. And as Jeet said earlier, guys, please feel free to reach out to him, contact him, and just see how he can help you with your startups. Or even if you're still within an established business, but you need help in certain areas, Jeet can definitely do something for you. So please, reach out to him through the contact details in the show notes below. And that is it, guys. So lastly, before we sign off, I'd just like to ask one more favour of our dedicated audience, the guys that are listening in today. And that is, if you did enjoy the show, guys, then please, we are still trying to get onto the new and noteworthy section in the iTunes store. And one thing that's going to help us a lot in that is just by people engaging with the podcast, leaving rates and reviews and subscribing to our channel. So if you could do that, that'd be very much appreciated by us and at MyCoda, and it would just allow us to build a greater presence in the podcast market and bring some really cool personalities to this show, because it's our aim and our mission to provide as much value as we can for you guys. So for a small favour in return, we can provide a ton of value and help you out of your businesses. And that is it, guys. Thank you so much for listening in. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you for next time for the MyCoda podcast.